The silence had a life expectancy. Every silence does, not an indefinite quality that can be maintained without limit regardless of what is sitting inside it, a specific, determined by its contents life expectancy. Where the size of what the silence is holding determines how long the silence can continue holding it before the weight simply becomes more than the structure can bear. This silence has reached its life expectancy. It is ending, not because someone decided to end it, not because a plan was executed or a moment was identified as the right one, or any of the deliberate mechanisms by which silences are sometimes concluded were engaged, because the thing inside the silence has grown larger than the silence can contain, because the weight of what was being held has finally exceeded the structural capacity of the holding. The silence breaks, not because the person is ready, because the silence is done. I want to begin with what was inside the silence, because understanding what has been being held is what gives the breaking of the silence its meaning. This was not a comfortable silence. I want to establish that immediately, because silences come in varieties, and the variety matters enormously for understanding what their ending produces. Comfortable silences are the ones that exist between people who have settled something between them, who have arrived at a point of mutual understanding that does not require continuous verbal maintenance. Those silences feel like rest. This one has not felt like rest. This has been the effortful silence. The specific, actively maintained, requires continuous renewal quality of a silence that exists not because the thing inside it has been resolved, but because the thing inside it has not yet found its way out. Where the silence is not the absence of something to say, but the suppression of something very much wanting to be said. The suppression is the work, and the work has been running for longer than is sustainable. Let me describe what I am seeing, because the image arrived with a specificity I want to honor. A pressure that has been building, not dramatically, not in a way that has been producing visible signs of strain that would have alerted anyone watching to the fact that something was nearing its limit. The specific interior quality of pressure that builds quietly. That is not visible from the outside because the person maintaining it has been doing so with the particular practiced quality of someone who has learned to contain things and who has been applying that skill here. But the containing has reached its limit, not in an explosion, in the specific irreversible quality of a container that has been filled past its capacity and that simply cannot maintain its integrity any further, where what was inside begins to press through whatever small openings are available, where the containment becomes increasingly imperfect, where the thing inside starts to be present in how the person speaks and moves and holds themselves in moments when they are not actively managing the containing. You may have begun to notice the small leaks, the moments where something showed through that was quickly smoothed back, but that was there for a moment, visible. Those moments have been increasing, and the full breach is imminent. I want to speak to what cannot be held back anymore, because the title names it and the content of it deserves specificity. It is not simply feeling. Feeling in the general sense of caring about someone can be held back indefinitely by someone with sufficient practice and sufficient motivation to hold it. The general caring for someone can be managed into something neutral and undisclosed if the person doing the managing has enough reason to manage it and enough structure to maintain the management. What cannot be held back is something more specific than that. It is the specific, particular, highly detailed version of what they feel The feeling that has specific content, that contains within it not only the fact of caring, but the specific texture of how they care, the specific things about you that have been sitting in them as vivid, named, impossible to generalize pieces of an experience that is irreducibly about you rather than about the idea of you. The specific observations they have made about you that they have been unable to share, the specific memories that carry a quality of weight because of what they mean rather than simply because they happened, the specific way they understand you with the particular accuracy that comes from genuinely paying attention to someone over time that they have been holding privately as both a comfort and a cost. All of that, that is what cannot be held back. And it is coming forward. All of that, that is what cannot be held back. And it is coming forward. I want to describe what it has felt like for this person to carry all of that privately for the period of the silence. Because I think understanding the interior experience of the carrying will help you understand the quality of what is released when the carrying ends. The private carrying of something this specific and this detailed is exhausting in a particular way. Not the dramatic exhaustion of something painful or distressing. The quiet, accumulating exhaustion of something that is continuously present and continuously vivid and continuously asking to be expressed and continuously being held back from expression. The specific cognitive and emotional load of maintaining a significant interior landscape that has no external outlet. Every time something happens that touches what they are carrying, which turns out to be often because you have become woven into how they process experience, there is the small internal moment of the thing arising and the managed return of the thing to where it has been living. Thousands of those moments across the period of the silence, each one small, each one unremarkable from the outside. Together, the accumulated cost of what it has taken to maintain this silence for this long. And that cost is now producing the ending. I want to speak to the moment the holding back stops, because it is not a single dramatic moment in the reading I am doing for you. It has a texture and a timeline that I want to give you. It starts with the small things. Before the full, direct, cannot be misunderstood expression of everything that has been held back comes the specific, incremental quality of someone who has stopped actively suppressing and who has simply stopped, who is no longer applying the daily effort of pushing things back down, who is allowing what rises to rise without immediately redirecting it. The first signs are subtle, a message that is slightly warmer than previous messages, not dramatically different, containing something that in the prior period of active suppression would have been caught and edited before sending, but now simply sent, because the catching and editing is no longer being done with the same rigor. A moment in an interaction where they look at you slightly too long, where the management of how they hold themselves in your presence becomes slightly less managed, where something shows through the surface that they would have previously ensured did not show. These small things are the beginning of the ending of the silence, and they accumulate quickly from this point. Tell me in the comments if you have been noticing these small things. The subtle shifts in how this person has been engaging with you in recent interactions that suggest something is different from how it was. If the silence has been producing these early leaks that you have been registering without quite having a framework for understanding what they mean, tell me if this reading is landing where it belongs. I want to speak to what the full ending of the silence actually looks like, because after the small things comes the actual thing, and I want to give you the full picture of what the actual thing is. It arrives in a form that requires a response, not the ambiguous, could be read in multiple ways, technically deniable form that the small things have, the direct form, the form that names what it is naming. That does not allow for the comfortable exit of reinterpretation. That puts something in the space between you that was previously only on one side of the space between you. And in doing so, changes the space. Because what has been on one side of the space between you has been shaping the dynamic without being available for engagement, has been influencing how this person has been showing up without either of you being able to address it directly, has been the thing underneath all of the surface of the interactions between you that gave the surface its particular quality without either of you having official access to what was producing that quality. Once it is in the shared space, you both have access, and having access changes what is possible in the dynamic in a fundamental way. Not necessarily in the direction of any particular outcome, simply in the direction of honesty, of two people engaging with what is actually present rather than with the managed version, of the dynamic being shaped by what is real rather than by what is being controlled. Real is better, even when it is more complex. I want to speak to something about you that has been drawing this forward, because the silence ending is not only about them. Your presence in the situation has been a factor. There is something about how you have been existing in recent weeks that has changed the quality of the pressure they have been managing. Not something you did deliberately, the specific unself-conscious quality of someone who has been more fully themselves, more settled into their own center of gravity, less organized around the dynamic with this person, and more simply present in their own life in a way that radiates. That radiation has been reaching this person. And the effect of your increased settledness on the dynamic has been to increase the pressure of what they have been containing. Because when you become more yourself, more present, more clearly who you are, without the overlay of managing the dynamic, the thing they have been holding back becomes more specific and more vivid and more impossible to maintain at the distance that the silence required. You became more of what they cannot hold back from, without trying to, simply by being more fully yourself. You became more of what they cannot hold back from, without trying to, simply by being more fully yourself. I want to add something to this because I think it is the piece that is most counterintuitive and therefore the most worth naming. The way to draw forward what someone has been holding back is not to reach toward it. Reaching creates its own dynamic, creates a quality of pull that the person holding something often responds to by holding more tightly rather than less, by becoming more defended rather than less, by the specific, somewhat paradoxical mechanism of having someone come toward what you are holding, making it feel more necessary to protect what you are holding. What draws things forward is not the reach. It is the settled, the specific, grounded, self-possessed quality of someone who is not reaching, who is simply present in their own life with a quality of completeness that makes the thing being held feel, in the person holding it, like something that is being held back from its natural destination rather than simply being maintained in the status quo. You have been the natural destination without reaching to be. and the sense in this person that what they are holding has a destination, and that the destination is simply being itself rather than reaching for what they carry, has been the mechanism of the ending. Let me speak to what you do when the silence ends. Because it is ending and your reception of what comes out of it matters, be present. That is the complete instruction, but I want to give it its full meaning. Be present in the specific way that you are uniquely capable of being present. With the quality of genuine attention, that is one of the most recognizable things about you when you are fully in a moment rather than partly in a moment and partly somewhere else, not performing attention, giving it the specific, unhurried, I am actually here quality of someone who has decided that the moment in front of them is worth the full allocation of their presence, not a portion of it, all of it, because what is coming out of the silence has been held for a long time, has been maintained at a significant personal cost, is arriving in a form that required more courage to produce than the surface of the moment will make visible. That deserves the full quality of your actual presence, not the managed version, not the version that is partly in the moment and partly assessing the moment from a slight distance. The version that simply receives what is arriving without the immediate protective organizing of it into something more manageable. Let it arrive fully before you decide what to do with it. I want to say one thing about what the ending of the silence means for the larger situation, because this reading is not only about a specific moment, it is about a threshold. The silence ending is the threshold. Once something is said that was previously unsaid, the relationship to everything that follows changes. The specific, ambiguous, neither here nor there quality of a dynamic that has been shaped by something that was present but unacknowledged becomes unavailable. The thing that was underneath is now on the surface, and surfaces require different navigation than depths. The navigation that follows the ending of the silence is navigation with full information, with the actual, complete, honest picture of what is present rather than the incomplete version that was available while the silence was maintaining its exclusion of the essential thing. Full information navigation is harder in some ways and cleaner in others. Harder because it requires engaging with what is actually there rather than managing the comfortable ambiguity of what remains unspecified. Cleaner because the ambiguity, while comfortable in some ways, has been its own kind of cost, has required its own kind of management, has produced its own quality of imprecision in how the dynamic has been navigated. What comes after the silence has the specific, slightly unfamiliar quality of clarity. And clarity, once present, is very difficult to return to the prior state of managed ambiguity. The silence is over, and what replaces it is real. The silence is over, and what replaces it is real. I want to give that one more specific dimension before we arrive at the closing image. Real has a particular quality in the context of a dynamic that has been operating under the influence of something unspoken for a significant stretch of time. It has weight, not the weight of something heavy in a burdensome sense, the weight of something that has genuine substance, that cannot be moved through quickly or dismissed or organized into insignificance. That requires actual engagement from both people in the way that things that are real require engagement. That engagement is what the ending of the silence opened, not a single conversation. a quality of relationship to this dynamic that did not previously exist because the thing at the center of it was not previously available to be engaged with. Now it is. And the engagement that follows is going to be the most honest version of anything that has happened between you in the period during which the silence was the arrangement. More honest because it is based on what is actually there. More honest because the thing that was shaping everything from below the surface is now on the surface where it can be addressed as what it actually is. More honest and therefore more real and therefore more worth your full, unhurried, genuinely present engagement. As we close, I want to give you one final image. The moment just before the silence ends, the person who has been holding it in the final seconds of holding it, not composing, not planning, simply at the limit of what was sustainable and understanding that the next moment is the moment. And then the silence ends, not dramatically. In whatever small or large or somewhere in between form the ending actually takes, with a specific, irreversible quality of something that has been spoken that cannot be unspoken. And in the space where the silence used to be, something new, not fully formed, not yet with a clear shape that tells you exactly what it is and what it means and what it requires, but real, present, in the shared space where it can be engaged with rather than only felt from one side through the wall of the silence. That something is coming very soon. And you, Virgo, are going to know exactly what to do with it.